On March 30th, 1992, something unexpected happened at the Oscars.
And the Oscar goes to The Silence of the Lambs.
The Silence of the Lambs was the first horror film to win Best Picture since Rebecca in 1941, and only the second horror film ever to take home the Oscars' biggest award. In general, the Oscars are known for choosing dramatic films for Best Picture, like this, or this, or this. Very rarely do genre films, meaning films that belong to a specific category, such as science fiction, fantasy, or comedy, get much love from the Oscars, and horror films are no exception to this rule. In fact, over the entire course of Oscars history, less than 10 Best Picture nominees fit into the horror genre, which means that some of the most beloved and well-known horror films didn't make the cut. Even Hitchcock never won a directing Oscar, despite being nominated 5 times. The only categories where these films have found consistent success are in technical categories, such as makeup, visual effects, and original score. So why have horror films been repeatedly snubbed by the Academy? A main reason is probably because the term horror is often associated with cheap scares, gratuitous sex, and excessive gore.
It's interesting that when a movie is too smart or too successful, nobody calls it a horror film anymore. They call it a thriller. You know, when Stanley Kubrick made The Shining, that was a horror film. When Philip Kaufman made Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that was a horror film. When Ridley Scott made Alien, that was a horror film. When Spielberg made Jaws, that was a horror film. It was to be scary. But now people go back and they go, well, it's more of a drama, it's more of a thriller. Somehow horror, ghettoizes, and you're not gonna win Oscars if it's called a horror film.
Positive critical reviews can help horror films be taken more seriously and break the stigma. But in order to register with Academy voters, these films also need to be profitable. Every previous horror Best Picture nominee has not only been loved by critics, but also made a massive amount of money. Which is why there have been several incredible horror films in recent years that have been overlooked by the Oscars. They've received critical acclaim, but unfortunately, their modest box office success isn't enough to get the Academy's attention. The same isn't true for dramatic films. Nominations are often given to small indie films with equally limited box office success. And the Academy's recognition is hugely helpful to these tiny films, oftentimes giving them increased visibility and a boost in ticket sales. But independent horror films don't seem to get the same benefits. The last major horror contender for Best Picture was Black Swan in 2010, which received widespread critical and commercial success. However, the Academy still went for a more conventional choice, giving Best Picture to The King's Speech instead. This trend has happened over and over, with The Sting defeating The Exorcist, The Last Emperor beating Fatal Attraction, and The Sixth Sense losing to American Beauty. This year, the Academy has the opportunity to break tradition and reward Get Out. The film has been loved by critics, made a huge profit, and provides sharp social commentary about race relations in America.
This movie is very much about the issue of race, and it's possible to deal with social issues without going at them head on. I really felt like this mixture of topic and genre was a missing piece of the conversation.
Horror films have always been a reflection of society and its current fears. For example, the threat of nuclear war in the 1950s resulted in horror films about technological advancements gone wrong. And in the 80s, slasher films were a response to the rise in serial killers. Perhaps this is why people return to horror films over and over, because seeing our fears on screen gives us a chance to confront them in a contained way and provides a sense of relief afterwards.
You see, it all starts with a baby, and the mother says, boo, and scares the hell out of the baby, gives it the hiccups, and then the baby giggles. There's its first moment of fear. We all enjoy, shall we say, putting our toe in the cold water of fear.
2018 might be horror's best chance to shine, especially with the invitation of over 700 new members to the Academy, largely in response to the Oscars So White backlash. The younger, more diverse voters might favor bold themes rather than the expected Oscar bait. This year will either be the first wave in a new trend of horror film acceptance, or further proof that horror will continue to flourish, even without the validation from the Oscars.
It's a sentence, what you need to set it. Sometimes I write a little song, don't forget it.